Hi there, and welcome to Cross Stitch Basics, Tools, Techniques, and your first project. I'm so glad you're here. Whether you've never threaded a needle before or you're picking up cross stitch again after some time away, this course will give you the foundation and confidence to get started, one stitch at a time. We'll begin with the absolute basics. I'll walk you through the tools you'll need, how to choose the right fabric and floss, and how to prepare your materials. You'll learn essential techniques like reading a pattern, creating your first stitches, and finishing your work cleanly. And don't worry, we'll complete your first project together. It's designed specifically for beginners, so you can practice each technique and see your progress as you go. Cross stitch is more than just a craft. It's a calming, creative outlet and a wonderful way to make something truly personal. All of my course materials, including the supply list, printable patterns, stitching guides, can be found on my website, www.saltystitcherdesigns.com, so be sure to check that out before we begin. Now, grab your needle and thread, get cozy, and let's start stitching.
Welcome back. So for this part of the course, we're going to go through the pattern that I provided. It is available for download. And the reason we go through this pattern in this case is to prevent any errors, save some time, save us some money. You wouldn't believe how many people pick up a cross stitch pattern, purchase all of the materials, what they think they need, start stitching only to find out they've gotten halfway through the project and either have the wrong kind of fabric, wrong size of fabric, the wrong type of floss. They're using the incorrect number of threads. A lot can go wrong between purchasing materials and stitching the project. So what I like to do when I receive a new pattern is I like to go front to back, read every bit of the detail, go through the instructions. And for this lesson, I'm going to do the same thing for you. I've also included an annotated version of the pattern, also available for download. So feel free to download, print that out, and follow along. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to go through this. So in the first section here, you will see we have the title. And typically on the title page, you'll have who the designer is. And sometimes it's at the top, sometimes it's at the bottom. But you'll find that I designed this pattern and I provided some copyright information at the top. Now, I just want to stop here briefly and go over copyright. So you'll find patterns that are PDF patterns, and you'll also find printed patterns. For PDF patterns, typically we do not gift those, resell PDFs, or give them away after we've stitched them. PDFs are really hard to control, and we really don't want to cheat the designers out of what they're due. So for PDFs, please do not send them along. Don't email them. Don't gift them. Resell them. That is typically not appropriate. For paper charts, however, that's a little different. If you've paid for an actual paper chart, those are typically regifted. You can find them on eBay. They are not reproduced, mass reproduced, but you can gift them and share them once you're done, and share the love with other stitchers. So that's a bit on copyright. Again, if you have any questions regarding copyright, please send me an email or reach out. Okay, so the image on the front. In this particular pattern, the image is a computer-generated image. So I've provided the computer-generated image based on the DMC colors, and we went through some of the colors in a few lessons ago. Some patterns you will see will have an actual photograph of the finished product. Sometimes these photographs are notoriously not altered, but they don't necessarily reflect the actual image, and they don't necessarily do the final stitching product justice. So it is a personal preference by the designer whether they include a computer-generated image on the front or the final product. From my perspective, if you like the colors that you're stitching in, typically the designer will not put out a flawed or bad product. So the end result is going to look a lot better than the image that is on the front of the pattern. That is in general, may not be in all cases. I won't put money down on it, but 99% of the time, your final product is going to look 10 times better than the image on the front. And that's just due to printing, lighting, quality of the photograph. And then some designers will actually degrade the quality on the front just so that you cannot easily copy the image. Okay, so we're going to flip it over now and here, okay, nuts and bolts of the pattern. So we're going to start at the top. So at the top, you have the stitch count, followed by the finish size and the type of and size of fabric that the designer recommends using. So with stitch count, we have 85 stitches across and 35 stitches down. And the finish size, the way we get the finish size in a cross stitch project is we take the stitch count. So in this case, let's take 85 and we divide by the size of the fabric in terms of count. So divide by 14. So 85 divided by 14 is roughly 6.07. I've rounded up to make things a little bit easier. And then 35 divided by 14, you get 2.5 inches. Oh, so that gives you the finish size. If you change to, let's say, a 18 count Aida, like this is, then you would take 85 and divide by 18, and then 35 divided by 18, and that gives you the size. But since we're using 14 count Aida in this case, our finish size is going to be 6.1 inches by 2.5 inches. Always confirm that this is the case. Do your own math. Do not take the chart as gospel. It very helpful to do it on your own. It is also helpful to read the instructions to see if the pattern calls for you stitching over 1 or over 2. And we'll go through more of that later when we start stitching. But that impacts size as well. But since we're working on Aida, it's assumed that you're going to stitch over 1 thread. And the finished size will be 6.1 by 2.5. Okay, so you have the pattern now, and each color will have its own symbol. And I know it's, let's see if I can zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so each color has its symbol. So we'll take this symbol here. It looks like a little microphone on my image. And that corresponds to DMC 502, blue, green. And that makes sense because that is, that corresponds to the stem of the flowers. I like to go through each color and each symbol so I understand which colors correspond to which symbols. And then I'm also keeping an eye on where I would like to start. We'll talk a little bit more about this later, but a lot of people like to start with the light colors first and work their way to dark colors. That seems like an easier way to stitch, but it's really personal preference at this point. So we'll move down to the chart. Again, you have your symbols corresponding to each color. Typically in your chart, you'll have the type of thread, the symbol, the name of the thread, how many strands the designer recommends you use, and the number of stitches. And going back to our chart, you'll see that you have this type of stitch right here. So this is outlining the veins of the leaves. And this is in a back stitch. So you can see back stitch here, and I recommend we stitch our back stitch in black. Now, again, another personal preference item, whether you use 1 or 2 strands for back stitch, that is up to you. I will show you both techniques and both options when we stitch the pattern. Okay, moving down to the instructions. Always read the instructions. I was talking with the stitcher the other day, and they got part of the way through a color and realized that they had used the incorrect number of threads for the particular project. And unfortunately, it was a kit, so they had a finite amount of thread for that particular color. And unfortunately, they had to pull out all of the stitches they had already done because they did not know if they could match that color. So always read the instructions before stitching a pattern. And in these instructions, I recommend stitching this pattern on 14 count Aida with 2 threads of DMC thread. We will go over the rest of the instructions a little bit later. You don't have to worry about linen. But if you are taking this course and you are stitching on linen and you want to know how to interpret that, please shoot me an email and we'll go through that. Okay, you'll see there are optional French knots or beads for the center of the heart. So right here in this pattern, you can't see it on this video, but there are little red dots here that take the place of the red symbol. You'll see this in some charts, and this allows you to put an optional French knot, and I'll show you how to complete a French knot or place a bead. And I can also show you how to place a bead as well. Whenever you see this, these are enhancements to a project, and it is really personal preference and is up to you whether you want to just do a regular stitch, which is completely fine, or if you want to do a French knot or a bead. And then finally, either on the back or on the next page, a designer will include how to get in contact with them. A few pro tips. The first one is if you find an error in the project, it is very helpful to just go to the designer's website, and most of the time they will have directions on how to fix the error, or they would have already noted the error and corrected it in some way, shape, or form. So if you notice that something is just not right with a pattern, and these are typical in older patterns, go ahead and go to the designer's website and see if they already have a fix there for you. And I think that is about it for the anatomy of a pattern. Welcome back. It's time to gather our materials to complete this project. But before we start, wanted to draw your attention to the PDF document that's included in this lesson. It's very handy. It's fully downloadable and available for you to print out and take with you to your local needlework shop or your local craft store. But without further ado, we're going to go through each item. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at the address provided in the course. The first item on our list is our fabric. So for this project, it calls for a 14 count Aida. As you can see, the piece I have here is a white Aida. 14 count is the size. And that basically just tells you that there are 14 stitches per inch. Aida comes in a variety of sizes. You will typically find it in packaging like this at your local needlework store or your local fabric store. This particular brand is the Loops and Threads. It is fairly common. It'll come in various sizes. For our purposes, you want a size that's roughly 12 by 12 or greater, and we will go through how to properly size the fabric, cut it down for this project a little bit later. But what you're looking for at the store is white Aida 14 count. It does come in a variety of colors as well. As a beginner, I recommend just using white Aida. I don't recommend a dark color for this particular project. The second item on the list is a needle. So for this project, we want a size 24 tapestry needle. And the difference between a tapestry needle and maybe one that you have for sewing already in your craft room or stash, is that a tapestry needle has a blunt point. And this is fairly handy in cross stitch and in needlework because the blunt point, it finds the holes in the Aida a little easier. And then also some of your very pointy, sharp needles will pierce the fabric in areas that you don't want it to be pierced. So this keeps the stitches consistent, and it helps to keep the stitches neat. So a 24 size tapestry needle, any brand that you have access to is okay. The next item on the list is a hoop. So for our project, it is a fairly small project. So your standard 6-inch wood hoop will work. Hoops come in a variety of sizes. I've included a few in a variety of colors, shapes. They are really a personal preference. As you can see, this particular one is made out of plastic. It has a wing nut here. Most components of the hoop are made up of an inner hoop and an outer hoop. The fabric fits in between. Frames are typically similar. One word of caution, I recommend buying a hoop that is not too big. So as an example, if you use a large hoop or frame like this one on a very small project, you may have some air gaps when you place the fabric in the hoop or the frame, and you won't be able to get the fabric as tight as you may want it as a beginner. So getting the right size hoop or frame is very helpful. And again, for this project, a 6-inch or 9-inch hoop will work. Okay, moving along, we have our thread. Thread can be found at any local needlework shop or fabric store or craft store. For this project, we only need 5 colors. They come in skeins. You will need 1 skein of each color for this project. This is typically what a DMC thread looks like. DMC is a major brand in France. There's also Anchor thread. And the colors here are basic, so you can substitute colors if you'd like. But if you want to keep with our course here, I recommend DMC thread, and this can be found again at your local craft store. 1 skein of each. Now, there are a variety of ways to store your thread. Because this project only has 5 colors, I tend to keep it simple and store it in your favorite sandwich bag or reclosable bag. Some people like to put them on bobbins, wrap them around on bobbins. Some people like to put them on bows. I don't have that here, but for this project, let's just keep it simple. Keep it in your favorite bag. Okay, the next thing you will need is some sort of measuring tape or ruler. If you do some sewing, you probably have this mat that's under here that will work, but that's certainly overkill. On the page, I recommend a 3x5 square ruler. You can find that online or find that at any craft store, fabric store. But if you just have a simple measuring tape or ruler, that will work too. Really, we will use this when we're sizing our fabric and deciding where to start our project. So that is very helpful to have. An optional item is a water erasable pen. So this type of pen is good when marking the center of your fabric, marking the corners. On more complicated pieces, some people like to grid their fabric. I don't recommend using a regular pen or a pencil for that. A water erasable pen can be really helpful if you'd like to do that, and we'll go through that a little bit later. Okay, another optional item is a needle minder, and it does exactly what the title says. This is a needle minder here. It just holds your needle and keeps it from falling off and falling into the bag piercing different things, piercing, your finger when you reach into a bag. So it's really handy to have a needle minder. It kind of decorates your project as well. And you can get those anywhere if you have a magnet on your refrigerator, or even a button. You can always convert them into needle minders, but they're available online as well. And finally, you want to keep all of your items together in a project bag. Any bag will do. There are fancy project bags online made of fabric. I like this project bag that I sourced from Amazon. They come in a variety of sizes and shapes depending on the project. And I'm always drinking something when I'm around my project. So having this type of bag with, I think it's vinyl cover to protect my project is really helpful. So a project bag, essential. And then finally, a pair of scissors. So I did not include this on the materials because most people have scissors, but I just wanted to draw your attention to these little snips. These are really fun to have. They're lightweight. They are flat. I don't know if you can tell, they are flat. So when you snip your threads on the back of your project, you can get fairly close to the fabric. They are a little blunt. They're not too terribly sharp. So unlike a seam ripper, this will prevent you from placing a hole in your fabric. Seam rippers can be quite dangerous around cross-stitch projects and embroidery projects. I don't recommend a seam ripper for this particular job. So very small scissors or snips. I like this. It has a safety cover on it, and it is small enough so that you can take this when you travel. TSA typically will not confiscate this type of snip or scissor. So that is about it for materials for this particular project. You can go down the rabbit hole with all different types of cross stitch and embroidery and sewing needles, but these are the basics, and this is all you will need to complete this course and complete the cross-stitch projects that I've included in the course. Welcome back. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to prepare your fabric and load it on your hoop. The items that you'll need for this particular lesson is the fabric that you purchase that you intend to use, your hoop, a measuring tape or a measuring square or a ruler, and your pattern. Okay, we're going to get started. So the first thing we need to do to prepare our fabric is to confirm the stitch count and the finished size of the pattern. So in a previous lesson, we already talked about the stitch count and how to find the finished size, but we'll do a little bit of a review. In this case, the stitch count is 85 by 35, and I can confirm that by looking at the chart. It's always worth double checking. So if we take the length, 85, and divide it by 14, which is our size of Ada, we get 6.07, and we round it up to 6.1. And if we take 35 and divide by 14, we get 2.5. So our finished size of the actual pattern as it is stitched is 6.1 by 2.5. But if we stitch it and we cut our fabric to that size, that means we're going to stitch all the way to the end of the fabric. And that's not helpful in most cases, because in many cases, most cases, 90% of the time, you're going to want to frame this or make it into a pillow, in which case you're going to need some buffer on either side. So the rule of thumb in cross stitch is to take your finished size and add 2 to 3 inches to each end. So in that case, for this project, and I'm going to round up, I'll end up with roughly 12 inches wide by 8 to 9 inches, or 12 inches in length, 8 to 9 inches wide. This gives me plenty of room to stitch the project. It gives me plenty of room to move my hoop around the project to allow me to stitch on different parts comfortably. And it doesn't waste too much fabric. So the next thing we want to do, so go ahead and pause the video and take your fabric, measure it out, calculate your stitch count, measure it out, and then go ahead and cut it. The next step, as you can see, I've already stitched my fabric around the sides. So in most cases, when you cut your fabric to this size, you're going to have little frayed edges. And what eventually happens, and put it here, what eventually happens is you will get pieces of the linen that tend to come off the ends or unweave. This can be particularly frustrating if that gets close to your stitched location. So there are several ways to fix this. The first way, if you have a sewing machine, is to just go ahead and sew all the way around the edges. And that will make sure that the fraying won't get near your stitched part of the fabric. Another option is there's a product called Fray Check. And all you have to do is put some paper towels underneath and run the Fray Check along the side. It dries clear and it'll keep the product from fraying, most likely for the duration of the time that you're stitching. A third option, if you have a serger, not many people keep sergers in their home, but if you have a serger, you can serge around the edge of the fabric, and that will work as well. So now we have the appropriate size of fabric. We've used our fray check, or we have stitched along the side. And the next step in preparing our fabric is to find the center of the fabric. The easiest way to find the center, so you can do a bunch of calculations and you can measure, but the way that I find the center of the fabric is simply by folding it in half once, giving it a good crease, and then folding it in half one more time. And then I take my handy water erasable pen and mark the center of the pattern. And this is ideally close enough to the center. Remember, you already have a buffer on each side, so it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to get it to the perfect hole, but just get close. From there, what I like to do is I like to find the edges of my pattern and confirm. So on a small pattern like this, it's fairly easy to go ahead and count the number of stitches up from the center and down and then over to each side in order to find the corners of your project. So if you're looking at the pattern itself, this particular pattern and most patterns will show you where the center of the pattern is. And on this case, the center of the pattern is marked by two intersecting bold red lines. And what I do is I mark the center of the pattern, find the center of my fabric, and count the number of stitches up. Again, place a mark using my water erasable pen, and then I will go out to each side. So you can see on the fabric, I have indeed enough fabric for this particular pattern. I've left enough buffer on each side and on the top and the bottom. So this is the area that we are going to stitch on. Once we have this area, the next step is to decide where we're going to start. Move this down. Where we're going to start. So there are many schools of thought. There's no right or wrong way to do it. If you have a larger pattern, a lot of people like to find the center of their fabric and start in the middle. That is perfectly acceptable. Some people like to start in the top left or the top right. There is no right or wrong way to do this. In this pattern, I think because this is a beginning cross stitch class, I think I would like to start from here. And that way we can practice stitching over in one direction and stitching our leaves or our stems and our leaves, and then stitching in another direction, starting and stopping, and then coming up to do the stems there. This will give us the greatest number of practice with one color before we start switching colors. So I think for our purposes, I think we're going to start down here at the bottom. Okay, so I'm just going to put our pattern aside. Now that we have our fabric, go ahead and pause the video and grab your hoop if you don't already have it with you. I'm going to use this 8.5-inch hoop. Go ahead and loosen it to a nice degree so the inside portion of the hoop comes out. Now I'm going to show you two ways to load the fabric onto the hoop. Intuitively, you can place the fabric underneath, make sure that there's enough fabric to cover the hoop and overlap just a little bit. Again, you don't want any air gaps in the top or the bottom or on the sides. And you can simply place the top right over there. Okay, and cinch it down. And as you cinch it down and tighten it up, go ahead and just tug on the sides, and that'll give you a very nice tight canvas. A couple things to note here. We decided that we're going to start down in the center bottom. Notice that I have moved my hoop down far enough so that we can stitch here, and it's towards the center of the hoop. What you don't want is to load your hoop and then decide that you're going to start over here all the way at the end, because it's really difficult to stitch well and have your stitches lay flat and nice if you're all the way over to the edge. So go ahead and just move your hoop around so that you're in a comfortable spot when you begin to stitch. Another thing to consider when loading your hoop this way, almost like a drum, and you're stitching on top, when you handle this project, especially if you're stitching while holding the hoop, you're touching your fabric. And unless you have incredibly clean hands, you're going to get your fabric dirty, and it's going to require a quick bath before you fully finish the project. Even if you wash your hands before you stitch every single time, your hands still have oils on them that can get onto your fabric and discolor it, especially with white Aida or white linen. So instead of loading your hoop this way, there is a better way to load the hoop, and that's simply by changing it up, putting the inner ring on top and putting the outer ring on the bottom. And again, we're lining it up so that roughly where we want to start stitching is in the center, while still having enough fabric to pull tightly. And there, we're going to load it like this. Go ahead and tighten and pull as you tighten on either end. You want this fabric fairly tight, especially as a beginner. We won't talk about tension too much, other than to say that you want your tension on your threads and on your fabric to be consistent throughout. And this is one way, not to cheat, but this is one way to ensure that at least one of those variables are taken care of, where if you have consistency in your fabric, and then we can just focus on consistency with our threads. Okay, so this is cinched down pretty nicely. You can put it up. You can hear me tapping on what I would call the drum. It's nice and tight. It's in a good spot. It's not going to move around. And we're going to start stitching down here at this dot that I've marked, which corresponds to the center of the pattern. So I feel like I'm in a good spot. Now notice when I hold this fabric and I'm flipping it over with my left hand, I'm right-handed. I stitch right-handed. So as I'm holding this fabric, I am touching the back side of the fabric now. And again, this is important because if I'm going to be handling this a lot as I stitch, bringing it to different locations, this is just going to ensure that the side of the fabric that I'm stitching on will stay a lot cleaner than it would if we had our fabric in the opposite direction. So that's about it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we will put our first stitch in, and I will show you how to start and stop a stitch, and we'll put a few stitches in finally. Welcome back. So it's time to put our first stitch in our project, which is so exciting. The items that you will need for this particular video in this segment, this lesson, is your DMC blue-green thread, and it is DMC 502. You'll need your pattern. I like to keep mine in a page protector, but we are going to start right here with this symbol, which corresponds to DMC 502. You will need some snips or scissors, whatever you prefer. And you will need your needle, and that is your size 24 needle, and any brand that you selected will work for this video. Okay, so the next thing you're going to want to do, I'm going to show you how to start and stitch. I've already cut a 24-inch length of thread. You want this to be a little long because I'm going to show you the loop start today. But the first thing we have to do is separate our threads. So this DMC thread, I'm going to try and get it to show up on camera, is a 6-stranded thread. As you can see, there are 6 strands there. You can count them. And we only want to use 2 of these threads. But for our loop start, what we're going to do is just take one thread and separate it from the others. In your right 2 fingers, pinch the one thread. In your left, pinch all of the threads, and then simply pull the one thread. And it's going to bunch up like this, and that's okay. It should straighten out. And now you have one of the 6 threads. Now for our loop start, we obviously want to stitch this project with 2 threads. So I want you to fold it over once where you have 2 ends and then a loop at the end. Okay, there we go. I think you can see that. Threading our needle. Okay, so that is the next one. You can choose to try and thread it on this side, but this can be pretty challenging and pretty tough, and it can be frustrating. So I'm going to show you the easiest way to thread the needle. There are a few items. You can purchase a needle threader, but it's certainly not required here. So the easiest way to thread the needle is take the looped end and put it between your thumb and your forefinger and scoot it down until you can just barely see the loop. Take your needle and thread it from there, and you'll get a little, there, you can see it right there, the end, something you can grab and pull it through. So for a loop start, you want the frayed end on the side, the two strings, and you want the loop on the end. And I'll show you why here in just a second. So I'm going to demonstrate this a few times. So I'll give you a moment to go ahead and thread. Once you have it threaded, you have the loop on the end, and you have the 2 ends right here. We're going to go down in our first hole. And I'm going to do this one-handed because, so I have a stand here. There, you can see kind of the stand. And that's just to keep this steady for the video. You don't need a stand. Certainly they can be a little bit easier and allow you to stitch two-handed. But for our purposes, this for the video, it keeps the image straight so I don't make you seasick. So you're going to go down through the hole. And I'm going to try and zoom in a little bit more here so you can okay, so we're heading down on the bottom left, and this is our first stitch just underneath the heart all the way down at the bottom center. And then we're going to come up on the top right. And as you pull it through a little bit, we want to put our needle through the loop, pull it tight, and then bring it back down the bottom left. And that is our loop start. And to complete this cross, you come up on the bottom right, pull it through, and then down on the top left. And if you look at our chart, I will keep the image here, but go ahead and take a look at the chart. And you will see that we're going to start from the center and head right. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 stitches. So we're going to just continually do this, bottom left, top right, bottom right, top left, and just keep going like so. So a couple helpful hints. The length of thread, you can see that, so I use 24 inches, which is a length that I'm comfortable with, and that keeps it from fraying. So as you stitch, the thread is going to spin, and every so often you can just let it drop and unravel, and that'll keep it from creating knots. And for my folks that have been stitching before, there is a technique when you're using two threads called railroading. That you may have seen this in the glossary of terms. Railroading is easier with two threads, but it is simply as you come up through, you want to split the two as you go back down. So I don't know if you can see that, but I'm splitting the two and then I'm going to go back down. And this technique is called railroading, and it helps the stitches lie flat. So this is one way to create a full cross. And you want to do it in this fashion, one full stitch at a time, especially if you're using floss that is what is called variegated, so has multiple colors. If you use variegated floss and you go one stitch at a time, so you go one stitch and then half stitches all the way across and then come back, you won't get as much variegation. So this is another way also. You can do half stitches, and this uses less floss overall. But this is another way to head over in a straight line. I like to do this, especially when I'm using solid colors. It is faster, it uses less floss. And once you go over, so however many stitches you desire, you can come back and complete the cross. And depending on how OCD you are, you can railroad heading back in the process to allow your stitches to lie flat. Oh, and see, all right, occasionally you will get a knot. The easiest way, I like to keep a separate needle, two needles with me, and you can see I got a little bit of a knot. The easiest way to do it is put your separate needle through the hole and pull it, and eventually that knot will come loose. Oh, there's a little knot. Okay, so how are we going to finish a thread? So let's just say my thread is getting a little bit short and I want to finish this thread and start in a different spot. So what I would typically do is come up, finish my cross, come up and finish by going straight down through the center. And that is how you finish with a pin stitch. And that will hold it securely. Now, that is the best way to do it, especially if you don't want to continually turn your project over all the time. So again, I'm going to show you the pin stitch again, or rather, I'm going to show you how to do the loop start again. So I am separating one length of floss. I'm turning it over. Let's zoom out just a little bit. I'm putting it together. There's my loop on one end and the two ends, pitter ends on the other side. Pinching my floss on the loop side and getting a little to come through. and pulling it most of the way through. So let's see the loop start just one more time. And I'm just counting 1, 2, 3, 18. Okay, so let's do the loop start again and finish up our 18 stitches. So going down through the hole, bottom left hole, and I have my loop here on the end. I'm going to come up through the top right, put my needle through the loop, and then back down, bottom left. And now I have my half cross. And I'm going to go ahead and complete the 18 stitches and finish it off again. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, we're going to finish this cross. And that essentially takes us from the center all the way to the end here. And let's just say it's time to go, or you've run out of thread. I'm going to show you how to finish it again. So the second way to finish a thread, I'm going to take this off my stand and turn it over. So here I have my tail. So you can tell the differences in the two stitches. So these are full crosses, and you can see how much more thread it uses. This is the tail for my original. And these are the doing half cross, and then coming back and doing it again. And then here we're back to full crosses. So you can see the difference in the stitching with respect to the back. So another way to finish this thread, I'm just going to cinch that down so I don't make you sick, is to run this thread underneath a few of the stitches. And so 3 is fine. More is probably a bit overkill. I snagged a little bit. 3 is fine. And once you've run it underneath, you can pull it and then snip it off. And you can snip. So as you can see, this is where I finished our first thread with a pin stitch. And this is where I finished the second thread underneath the existing stitches. And both look fine. Both ways work. They're fairly simple. And that is just another way. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it back over. And so now we need to start our thread again, but I don't have the hoop on this side. So I have a decision to make. I can either use another length of thread, which can be quite wasteful, or I can start my project in 2 different ways. The first way is to run the thread underneath the stitches again. And let's see, since I'm going to stitch in this direction, up towards in that direction, I can run my thread, steady it for you, run my thread under and leave a slight tail. flip it over. So I've run it under, I've left a slight tail, and now I'm going to resume stitching. Oh, and see how it came out. So that is not necessarily the best way or most secure way. So another way to start your thread is by using a waist knot. So we can use our needle minder to hold our thread and create a knot on the end. Sometimes you may need 1 or 2 or 3 knots depending on the size of your fabric, just so it doesn't pull through. Okay, now that we have our knots, so we have our ends here, and then we have our knot at the end. So the idea is you would place your knot close to where you're stitching, but not in the middle of your stitching. And it would create a tail that you can stitch over as you stitch. So I've put my waist knot out to the side here, and now I'm going to start my stitches. And just for speed, I'm using two-handed stitching method, but still creating full crosses. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm catching my thread underneath when I do these 3 stitches to secure it. Okay, so let's just see, did I catch it? Indeed, I did catch my thread. And once you've done that, you can trim this. And be careful not to catch your fabric. But you can trim this and get rid of your waist knot, and now you can continue following the pattern and stitching. So you notice this is just by habit. You notice that I came up in the top right. So in order to have very neat stitches, one technique is to always go down through the fabric where you have another stitch and try never to come up. So in terms of this cross, I'm still making a cross from similar direction and bottom left to top right. I'm just going from top right to bottom left because I already had a stitch in that hole and I wanted to look as neat as possible. So I'm decided to go down that hole instead of up. And then this calls for 2 stitches. And for, again, going top right, bottom left, because there's already a thread in that hole. And bottom right to top left. Okay, so for the sake of practice, and I'm going to show you one more way to start your thread. I'm going to come up and I'm going to finish this with a pin stitch because that is my preferred method. And now I am piercing the Ada, and I'm just going down through the center. And I'm going to trim it. So this is our back so far. It looks pretty good and looks pretty clean. Okay, so I'm going to show you one more way. So just to recap, I've showed you how to do a loop start. I've showed you how to do a waist knot. And I've showed you, and I've tried and failed to show you how to do it by how to start a thread by sliding the thread underneath a few stitches, which is my least preferred way to do that. So now I'm going to show you the final way to start a thread. And we're going to start it up here, and that is with a pin stitch. Now let's zoom in a little bit. Okay. And that is with a pin stitch. So with a pin stitch, what we're going to do, and now we're working on our chart, we're working right here on this is we're going to go down the hole, down the bottom left, and so that we have a tail sticking up. We're going to come up through the top right and go down in the center of this fabric. And you're gonna have to pierce the fabric. And I always like to keep another needle here just to keep my stitches so it doesn't create a knot. Okay, so now we've gone down. So now we have kind of like a half of a stitch with the two tails. So then we're going to come up the bottom left where the two tails are coming up. And we're going to go back down into the center. There, just keeping those tails. And now that's essentially created a half stitch. And now we're going to come back up the bottom right to finish off this full cross and down in the top left. Now you still have those tails there, but that is not coming out. So the best way, and I'm using my needle minder to hold my needle, is just to take your snips and snip it off. And if you have your other needle, you can push those tails back down to the back side. It's not going to come off and it's nice and neat. And that is how you start with a pin stitch. That's if you've already used your loop and you just have a length of thread. Okay, so I think that is it for now. Our next lesson, I'm going to include a few videos with some stitch with me's where we will go through the pattern and I'll show you my stitching and you can follow along if you choose. But for some homework, go ahead and try your hand in starting and stopping. You can use the sides of the canvas to practice starting and stopping. None of this is going to be used. You certainly have enough thread. So go ahead and practice your pin stitch, your loop starts, your pin finishes, and go ahead and start stitching your project. We'll see you soon. Welcome back and welcome to the first Stitch With Me video. In the last video, I showed you how to start your thread. We started it in 3 different ways. First way was a loop start. The second, a pin stitch. The third, a waist knot. And for the remainder of this video and probably the remainder of the project, I'm going to continue to do the loop start to the extent that we can with a fresh thread. At all other times, if I don't have a fresh thread, I will use the pin stitch start, and I will also use the pin stitch finish. So without further ado, I'm just going to sit here and put a few stitches in this project, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy following along and get a little bit out of it. Please continue to practice your pin stitches, your loop starts, your finishes. Find the way that's most comfortable for you. But enjoy this video, and for the remainder of the time, you'll hear just a little bit of music while I stitch. Welcome back to another Stitch with Me. Now in the last Stitch with Me, many of you may have noticed that I started the pattern in possibly the incorrect location. And I love that I did this because it highlights why we add extra fabric to either side. So when I started the project, we started stitching here, yet I started at my bottom blue mark, which was down here. Now in this project, it was only 6 stitches off. And because we added 3 inches to each side of our fabric, I did not feel the need to pull all of the stitches out. In some projects, or if you have a very small amount of fabric, you may decide that you want to pull those stitches out. But in my case, and in this case, I'm just going to use it as a teaching moment to highlight the fact that it's always good to add more fabric to each end to accommodate little errors in stitching, little errors in counting, and just to give you some buffer. Okay, so as you can see, I have moved my frame just a little bit so that I can accommodate stitching on the leaf down here. And I'm going to stitch the leaf. We're going to forego the music for now because I'm going to stitch the leaf and then teach you how to do a bit of the back stitching. So again, I've moved my frame or my fabric over in the frame just to provide a more comfortable area to stitch. I have already loaded my needle with some thread. We're going to go ahead and start using the loop method. And I'm going to begin stitching right about right here. I'm going to come down and stitch this leaf. And during the stitch with me, we will get to do a little bit of back stitching. Okay, so let me find the best the spot. Okay, so we have 3, 2, 3, 2, and we're going to start right here with 3 stitches, and we're going to move over to the leaf. So there's our loop start. Okay, and in this spot, we're getting ready to start the leaf. So there's a couple decisions that we can make. Let me grab my extra needle here to point things out. So there's a couple extra decisions we can make. We can come from here and decide to go down here and stitch across, or we can come up here and start at the top row. This is what I will probably do. This is not a huge gap to carry your thread. Some people like to carry their thread short distances. And when I mean carry the thread, I mean not start and stop, just continue stitching. Sometimes on really light fabric and on large fabric, you can see that stitch in the back. But in this case, I think it's such a short distance that we can probably either go straight across or go diagonal up or come diagonal down and then work our way across. So I'm just going to go ahead and carry the thread up here. Normally, if it's more than a few stitches, I will not carry it. I'll go ahead and start and stop. Okay, so we've put the final stitch in the leaf. I'm going to go ahead and flip this over and clean up the back just a little bit. Put this back on. Okay, so now we're going to go do a bit of back stitching. So for this segment, you're going to need your black thread, and that's DMC 310. And this is my length of DMC. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a length of about 24 inches. That is the length that I like to use, especially when using a loop start. And again, the shorter the length, that will prevent snagging. It'll help prevent knots. And again, I have my length of thread. I'm going to pull apart the strands. Remember, this is a 6-stranded until I have it pinched between my fingers. And I'm going to grab the one strand, the single strand, and just pull it. There, you can see right there. Pull it straight out, and that comes apart. We'll put this aside. Fold our thread together, and now we have our loop to charge our needle. Okay, ends, the two ends on is the shorter piece, followed by the loop on the end. Okay, so with respect to back stitching, so back stitching is typically used for outlining, to provide a little bit more definition to a project. And in this case, on this particular project, I have chosen to put a few back stitches to show the center or the vein of the leaf here. And it's in a few other places. So you don't need a lot of DMC because we're just going to do a few back stitches. Sometimes backstitch is, sometimes people will use one thread for backstitch. I like a little bit more bold look in many of my projects, so I'm going to choose 2 threads. Again, you can try it on the side with 1 thread or 2 threads, and you can decide what look you prefer. But for me, I prefer a bold look in my backstitch. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with the 2 threads. So let me move this to the center of the screen. So we're just going to find the pattern, and we're going to take each stitch. So there are a few ways to do back stitching. You can do a back stitch in each stitch, which is essentially a straight line, or you can do it a few stitches at a time. We're going to start right here. And again, we're just going to start our thread like we normally would, but instead of going in the diagonal, since a back stitch is in a straight line, we're going to come up in the straight line, go through the hoop, and then come back down. And that creates our first stitch. So you can see that line. And especially with 14 count Aida, this is why I like to do it with 2 threads. So the reason it's called back stitch is because we're going to come down in that side, but then we're going to come up in the next stitch over, pull our thread through, and then back down in the next stitch. So this is the way I like to do back stitch. It's the neatest way. It provides the same tension as all of the other stitches that we've worked on. Some people So we're going to go back up through the third stitch. Some people will come all the way over, all the way over here. I do not choose to do it that way, but it does not look bad, and you can do it either way that suits your preference. I prefer to do one stitch at a time. I think it looks neat, and I think it works best for back stitching. But there can be, in some projects, especially some dimensions kits, there is a lot of back stitch. So you will be tempted to skip a few stitches in drawing that straight line. So in the pattern, we're going to go 3 over, and then we're going to go 2 down. So there I'm coming up in that diagonal stitch, coming across right on top, and then doing the same thing for one more stitch and coming back up. And that is pretty much it for backstitch. It's pretty straightforward. Welcome back and congratulations for making it this far in the pattern and in the course. Today we're going to start stitching our flower buds. So if you pull your pattern out and you look at your pattern, we started here with the stems and we made our way over to this leaf. So now we're going to start stitching the flower buds right here, here, and here. And if we have some time, we'll grab these little flower buds because they're the same color. So what you need for this lesson is your blue DMC 825. And I've already pre-cut a length, the length that I'd like to use. Put that right here. You'll need the golden pale brown, which is DMC 3827. And I've also pre-cut a length. And you'll need some scissors, your needles, and obviously your project. So we're going to go ahead and start with, I think we're going to start with our the blue small bud that goes right here. And so now off camera, I am pulling my length of thread, folding it over, and loading my needle. Okay, and because I have two needles, I will probably end up loading both of them up, one with each color. But right now we're just going to start with blue. We have our two strands on the end with our loop on the other end, and we're going to go ahead and do our loop start. And let me turn on some light. Okay, and that was a quick 5, 6, 7 stitches. I'm going to finish my thread off, give it a little cut, put that aside, and I'm going to load the second color onto my second needle. And make that final stitch. With the loop start, finish off that cross and finish off this thread with a pin stitch right through the center. Okay, and we're going to cut it off. And put that right here until we need it again. So I'm going to pull my blue out, and now we need to figure out where we want to start stitching. So on the pattern, you have to make a decision of whether So we're going to work on this motif here. And we have these stitches here, so we can always count up to the top and over and start working across. I think the easiest place to start is right here and work our way over to the left and down, and then go ahead and do the same thing up. And that'll save us a whole lot of counting, and it'll save us from moving all the way away from the threads that we know. Minimizes mistakes that way. So I'm going to go ahead and start right here. And I'm going to work my way across and work on the bottom half of the flower. And now I'm going to do a full pin stitch here because I don't have my loop anymore. Welcome back. Now that we've stitched the majority of the pattern, the stems, the leaves, the flowers, and the heart, it's time to do our optional French knots in the center of the heart. So on my pattern, I am looking at these dots right here. And when you see these dots on a pattern, most of the time they're calling for French knots, but some of the time they're calling for beads. But in this case, we're going to skip the beads and we're going to go directly to the French knots. Now, if you're not comfortable with French knots or don't want to do them, you can put additional stitches in there. You can leave them blank. Either way is fine. But I'm going to show you how to do a French knot in case you would like to do it. These can be a little bit scary, but bear with me, they're not so bad. Okay, so I have a length of my red thread, the coral red, very dark, DMC 817, the same one you use to stitch the flower and the heart. And again, we're going to use the loop start. We're going to anchor our thread, but we are going to do something a little different. We're just going to try and poke it up through the center here to anchor. And then back down through the side. Okay, so now we have an anchor. And to make our French knot, what we want to do is come back up through the center. Switch. Hold the needle in your left hand, the thread in your right, and wrap the thread around the needle 3 times or 4 times. Now, the more times you wrap the thread around your needle, the larger the knot. So once you've wrapped it, keep tension with your right hand on the thread and put the needle down just above where it came up. So not quite in the center, but close enough, and keep tension on that thread. Go ahead and pull the needle through. And it's going to be a little difficult because you're essentially pulling your needle through. Keep a little tension on that thread until it comes through. And there you have your French knot. So we're going to do it a few more times and I will zoom in. But now that we've already secured the thread, we're going to come up through the bottom left. Go ahead, switch hands, needle in the left, thread in the right, wrap the desired number of stitches, pull it straight, stick it down through the center of the fabric, always keeping tension on that knot. If you have a thimble, that might be helpful to push it through, but otherwise just go ahead and work it, push it through, keep tension on the thread all the way down through. Now these take a little bit of practice, but they're not too bad. So I'm just going to continue with the French knots and let you watch. Again, needle on the left, thread on the right, wrap the thread around the needle, the desired amount, and then find the center, keeping tension. And just give yourself enough slack to pull the needle through and keep that tension all the way till the end. And I'm going to do it 2 more times here to fill the remainder of the spots. Needle on the left, thread in the right, wrap the thread, desired amount. Push the needle through while maintaining a little bit of tension with your right hand. And we have one more French knot to do. Coming up, swapping hands. Now it's worth noting you don't want to wrap anything up here, because then it's going to be really hard to do it. If you do wrap it up here, you need to pull it all the way down and then the thread could kink a little bit. So try and stay close to the fabric, as close to the fabric as possible. Wrap your needle down through the center. Keep a little bit of tension on it so you don't have a really loose knot. And there you go. That is how you put in a French knot.